Hello and welcome to the Discovery Roundtable, the episode-by-episode discussion show about Star Trek Discovery from the perspective of Foundry players and Star Trek Online players as well. I'm your host, Drogan1701, and with me is Duncan Idaho.
Hello.
Greendragoon couldn't be with us today, but he will hopefully get better soon from his cold and join us in future episodes. But we have a fill-in who was meant to be just a general guest, but now he's a fill-in. So please welcome PaxFederatica.
Greetings, everyone.
If you could please introduce yourselves to everyone, Pax.
Oh, yes. In Star Trek Online, my handle is NCC-89471. That's where you can find my Foundry missions under. And on Twitter, it's the same handle, only without the dash. And I have a blog as well, PaxFederatica.blogspot.com. And on the sidebar, there's a labels cloud. And if you click Discovery, you'll get all my Discovery episode reviews so far.
And we are here tonight to discuss episode 5 of Star Trek Discovery, Choose Your Pain.
Drogan!
How is my Klingon? How is my Klingon at?
Well, yeah, then I just pointed to you, so apparently.
It was bad. It was bad enough that you chose me.
I got in there first.
Yeah.
So what do they do if? So what if they do if everyone chooses the guy to their left?
Well,
and they go around in circles.
I think they just go with whoever called it out first. So, or whoever they're asking. They probably got some type of tiebreaker.
They don't have a judge targ like your Judge Cat.
They bring out a rule book.
You wonder if it's that organized. I mean, they are Klingons, right?
Well, they're employing a strategy, as told by Harry Mudd in this episode. So
this is true. I will say I think it is pretty cool to see the Klingons really be as sort of vicious as a warrior race like that really would be.
Yeah, it was very fitting and very nice after they kind of got toned down throughout the entire run.
They did, and before that, they weren't really a quote warrior race, almost,
no.
except for maybe like Star Trek 3.
And I think it was only like Enterprise that really kind of dug into more with our various forays into Klingon ideology, sleeping dogs.
Well, with the exception of maybe a couple episodes of Voyager, anything that was Klingon before was always about Worf in some way.
And of course he's so Klingon that the other Klingons think.
Yeah. Although funny enough, am I right in thinking that one or more of those Klingons that we saw way back in the first episode when they all arrive and it's all the 24 houses, did we see one that was the House of Moog?
Oh, I don't recall, but I don't know if they go through like and name each
one? I mean,
one?
they didn't name each one. They named like 2 or 3.
Okay, yeah, I didn't recognize.
But there might have been that Easter egg in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean they did cores, so I think that was kind of their biggie. So I mean, who knows if House of Moog is a great house because there might be some turnover.
Well, remember back in Sons of Moog, Kern had said he'd told Worf that he'd gotten kicked out of the High Council, and I think he also said that his house had been demoted or something to that effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I think they were definitely one of the noble houses, but
and the naming of the houses always works according to chief patron. So when Quark had to marry what's her face? Oh,
and it became the House of Quark.
It became the House of at that point.
Grilka is
Grilka. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But it's like no, I'm thinking about it's Grilka.
I think it's not entirely consistent across the run of Star Trek, which what is, but I always like to say if you're looking for consistency in Star Trek, you are barking up the wrong tree. But there might be sort of rule. What you could say is there's rules to it that we don't know as to who gets to name the house and name it what.
Regional traditions, cultural traditions, family traditions. Could be that Duras is just a family that they keep bringing back the name every so often.
Mm-hmm. Well, because the Duras that Captain Archer fought and I think killed was not the same Duras as Tangled with Worf way off in TNG. So it's a name that they keep using.
Yeah. So it could just be a common name, and those two Klingons don't happen to have any type of family relation at all.
But we have gone off on a tangent, as we often do. I actually had to edit out 2 tangents from last week's episode.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately. Hopefully no one will remember.
I probably
because we want to get back to this episode. And before I do slightly, I do want to mention that you might notice our background is a little bit different tonight because we're broadcasting from the Vengeance Bridge, which kind of looks a little bit Discovery and Senjo-ish.
Yeah,
But we're mainly doing that because the Foundry is down in Star Trek Online.
Our studio was locked and no one had the keys.
Yes, pretty much. But anyway, we're here to discuss the episode, and there's really a lot going on in this episode. It's kind of the structure reminded me more of some of your classic Star Trek episodes, where it's a little bit more self-contained. It's a little bit more, there's an A plot and a B plot going on, and the perspective shifts between different characters. Although this is a very Lorca heavy episode. There's a lot going on that's about him, which is kind of a first for a switch away from Burnham's perspective.
Yeah, and she's got the B plot, but it's still, even when we're dealing with that, it's still shifting between Stamets and Saru quite a bit as well.
Yeah, we do get a lot more Saru in this episode than we have before.
And I really liked on this episode the interplay between Burnham and Saru, and it really felt like it was much more of an evolution of those characters, because this isn't necessarily how I'd expect it to go. Burnham, just to kind of do a little bit of a recap, her B plot is that she is she's concerned about the tardigrade and is trying to encourage the crew to find workarounds. And it was refreshing that they were pretty receptive. Pretty much everyone but Saru was on the stance like, this isn't necessarily a good thing, and we should find a way to fix this.
And we find out why that Saru is not, that he maybe panics a little bit. He's a little bit, he's feeling more pressure maybe than, the rest of the crew, because he feels like, there's a lot of unresolved issues between him and Burnham and Giorgio.
Yeah, and there's a lot
that are going on, and he's like, I'm not going to lose another captain. I'm not going to, and he goes kind of a little bit off to the deep end because of that.
And at the end of the episode, there's a really great moment where he reveals why he's so concerned. And it has a lot to do with his own insecurity, that he doesn't feel that he was ready for this, because he didn't get to learn from Giorgio. So Burnham did, and he's angry at Burnham for having that opportunity, and then also taking it away from him, and leaving him in this situation where he feels like he's not prepared, he's not ready for it. It's not his position, really. And that, it sort of plays to that side of the character, just saying that, hey, this is someone who is reacting, but very defensively because of what they feel. But at the same time, they're also succeeding too. Saru did a pretty good job as the CO, and he did make a valuable contribution to the rescue effort of Captain Lorca, and also handled the situation pretty well. So even if they basically made sure that the crew survived. I mean, not in the way that he intended, but by applying that pressure, I mean, he got a successful mission out of it. So it's complicated.
I don't suppose either of you have read the Desperate Hours book, which kind of
I've started it.
Okay, because I haven't yet, but the latest. There's a recent Literary Treks podcast that covered it, and apparently they talk about it a bit, and apparently they go a lot deeper into that backstory of Burnham and Saru aboard the Shenzhou and exactly what went down between them.
They do, and I've read the first couple of chapters, and it starts off with Giorgio sending off her previous first officer and promoting Burnham over Saru, essentially. So there's you do get a little bit more insight into the fallout from that decision, which it definitely plays in this episode. But what you were saying, Duncan, about making it complex is, it could have been a very standard. Our captain's in trouble. We have to go rescue them.
No, we can't rescue him. We can't use the tardigrade. You gotta use the tardigrade. I don't want to use the tardigrade. Your security, take her away, and then they kill the tardigrade. That's what I was kind of expecting from the plot. They didn't do that.
No, what they turned it into was character moments.
Yeah. It's good. It's hopeful, and The tardigrade, I mean, you're concerned about him. They used him one too many times, but he still was happy and was able to be let free at the end of the episode. And
tardigrade is, he's a little more resilient than we gave him credit for. They didn't, their stuff didn't just kill him.
Yeah, and that kind of played to the resilience of the actual tardigrade species too. So I thought that was a nice way of sort of also just referring it back to the fact that this thing is a different kind of life form, and the way it reacted of going into a deep hibernation mode was very fitting from a biological standpoint. It also worked for the episode too. It gave a really nice moment at the end with Burnham actually smiling at this as the tardigrade.
It's almost the first smile we've seen from her.
I think so. I mean, that's what I saw quoted on Twitter. I don't want to necessarily take that on face value, but I think it was the first smile we've seen, or at least the first big smile.
So let's talk about the other side of the episode, which is Captain Lorca being, at first he's at a meeting of Starfleet Command, or at least, some admirals, and getting a little flack from them, I would say, about his approach to things.
Yeah.
But he's definitely, pushing back, it's my ship, my way. And he's clearly been given a lot of latitude, and he intends to use it. And it got me thinking about, okay, so I'm thinking this is not a guy who would get that kind of latitude if it weren't wartime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's... I mean, yeah, I think it's the wartime situation that this guy is able to do what he's doing right now. And
Starfleet wouldn't tolerate this stuff if it wasn't.
Yeah, and it is just down to the war, and we find a little bit about his backstory just at the start of the war as well, because he wasn't the commanding officer of Discovery prior to the events of Battle of Binary Stars.
Yeah. That was an interesting story. I'm not sure how to react to that one.
Oh yeah, that one. I mean, we'll get to that one shortly. But yeah, with that meeting of the Admiralty, he got the flack for using the tardigrade too much. And then he got flack from the admiral he's been working with most directly, and got flack for Burnham's decision too. So it's one of those things where it just sort of highlights a little bit of the complexity of the character, that he's taking decisions that are, on the one hand, dispassionate in overusing the creature, but at the same time he's doing something that kind of runs at odds with that, of giving Burnham a really serious chance. So he's not all one way of being someone who will just use people to the point they break. He's also got something else going on there with how he views Burnham in that situation. And as we find out, there's more parallels than we suspected.
He's always got something going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always something beneath the surface with this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was a good episode. It was a good series of dialogues between him and the Admiralty, and then that leads into kind of the A plot of the story, where on his way back, his shuttle gets intercepted by the Klingons.
By a D7 that doesn't look like a D7.
I like that. I'm sure the internet did not like that, but I just like the fact that they went all out in doing a redesign of the D7, and I'm hoping they do that with the Constitution class.
Yes, I want to see more of it.
Because I like this aesthetic better. I think it's a very good style, very alien style, but at the same time very complementary to where the Klingons are at this point. Where I think if they just did a D7, it would look so out of place. I mean, it just would not fit even at all. I mean, even if it was kind of the same shape, because it's just a design from a different stylistic era.
What I'm wondering is, next time TOS is up for a remaster, are they going to retrofit those in the way they retrofitted other stuff?
I think they'd get too much backlash for that.
Yeah, and I don't think that would work as well, because then the interior and the exterior would just be a complete mismatch. So I don't think that would work quite as well, because then you would just be at odds with the rest of the aesthetic. So I think in that era, that everything works fine there. But once you start doing a production now, I think you do need to do a redesign for everything to fit together cohesively. Because that's something that TNG was able to do, is that they were able to just fit that redesign in the fact that they're moving forward. Discovery's telling a different kind of story that works really well for this particular era. And they don't have the same luxury. So as far as the capture goes, it was very quick and didn't dwell long, and it basically just threw the show into this A-plot right away.
Mm-hmm.
It may have felt like a little sudden, but it just worked so well in just establishing things, getting things up to speed without belaboring the details too much. So it was very well paced, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, the show continues to just really move along at a very brisk pace, which I think is great, and we're gonna like that when we have the whole thing to look at.
Yeah,
you know, there's no slow part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely.
So the I get and that throws us immediately into the basically kind of the meat of the episode, and that's Lorca interacting with a couple of fellow prisoners on the ship.
Yeah.
And Laurel, who I was really surprised to see. And I think that
I didn't realize it was her at first.
I didn't either. And then
I mean it's her same outfit and everything. But for some reason I didn't realize it was her.
Yeah, and then it took me like halfway through the episode. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Because you're really not expecting her to be there, and you know she's devious from how she interacted in the previous episode. So she's got a darn good reason for being there. And I think we'll find out there may be more to this episode than we know, in some way or another. That she's got a plot, and it's moving along now. And she's got aims, objectives, and we'll see how this goes. And it could go many different ways at this point.
It could.
Because it's just, we just don't know anything about why she was really there.
She takes a hit.
She takes a hit.
A glancing blow, essentially.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects her character, or if it does at all. That's what I'd be interested in. If she just has the fortitude to kind of push on with it, just like taking it off, just shrugging it off. Because I think she might do that if Discovery is of use to her in some other way. So I think that... So
will she be able to overcome any desire for revenge? Because, you know, this is going to be serialized, so I'm sure she's going to have the scars of it, you know, mentally and physically. So
I think she might have a grudge, but she might have a different reason for wanting Discovery's information than just the war. Because fighting the war is more of Kor's aim. Laurel's aim is to fulfill Takuma's legacy, and that's to unite the houses, like, totally. And she's got a plan for how to do that.
And unite them behind Vogue.
Yeah, so she's got a plan for how to put everything together. And so Discovery might not be for her something as simple as a Federation threat, but something she might be able to use herself if she got that technology. Or got the ship, or got the cooperation of the crew somehow.
Well, it sounds like they don't know exactly what Discovery is, but they know there's something going on.
There's something going on. Laurel might suspect what? That it might be like some type of transwarp, or another cloaking device.
Yeah.
Because it's not clear that the Klingons necessarily know that the ship is jumping, or is it decloaking? Just appearing out of nowhere, kind of like how they were using Vox's ship. So she might be investigating a lead one way or the other, and we'll probably see how exactly what she was interested in. Maybe through an episode that focuses a little bit more on Focus B-plot, and bring her back in as someone who's going to be explaining things a little bit more.
So what did you guys think of Harry Mudd?
Harry Mudd was interesting. I thought he was going to go with them. And I was really surprised that he actually turned out to be sort of the snitch between the three prisoners. Because I was almost positive it was going to be the other Federation officer, Lieutenant Ash Tyler. And I was really surprised that they brought him along. And in retrospect, it's going to be very interesting to have him as a member of the crew, because he could have a very good arc through the series, or turn out to be a very strong twist, depending on if he's exactly on the level.
There are a lot of rumors flying around right now, and speculation about that character.
He's a Klingon agent, but I could also see Discovery giving him a sort of a PTSD arc.
Which is what I remember them saying something about that. about how about that would be part of his character.
Yeah, so it could be that people are speculating that this other prisoner that Lorca was able to rescue with him, they're suspecting that he's going to be a Klingon agent, or he's broken in some way, and he's going to betray the Discovery crew. But I could also see it as just a reflection on the war itself, giving it another side. And from the quality of Discovery's running, I would not discount that. Although I think they could also make it interesting to sort of go along that line, and then switch it up and basically have him ultimately betray the crew in some way. So I think there's a lot of different directions they can go. It just depends on what they want to do.
One thing that I've seen or people are trying to use as evidence that he's a Klingon spy, or that he is in fact Voq, surgically altered, is that the actor Shazad Latif did not. He was in the credits for the whole time, but he did not appear until episode 5. Well, I don't think that's proof because, at least 3 of the leads were not in the first 2 episodes, but they were in the opening credits. So
So it kind of, it really depends on how far they're going to go in the series. So it's one of those things.
It does.
And we've got an actor credited for Voq, correct?
We do, but it's something that nobody's ever heard of.
Okay.
And it has only one acting credit.
Doesn't have a social media account and hasn't appeared before the regular media at all either. So that's kind of added fuel to that fire too.
It has. But everybody's got to get their start somewhere.
Yeah, and it's one of those
maybe this is his first job.
Yeah, and the one thing I'm going to just kind of throw on that one is just that if it was Voq, of him turning back. Like, that, the whole way the episode ended, for me, was hard to reconcile him as a Klingon agent. Because how the hell could they anticipate that would have gone well? Because there's no reason for Tyler to say, oh, you can't take me, and then, oh, I'm going to have a fight with L'Rell. And then, oh, let's hope that Lorca gets a glancing shot off rather than a direct hit. I mean, it would have been a really stupid plan to complicate it to that extent.
Yeah. Because
in no way did that really add to Lorca's impression of Tyler. It was just, heat of the moment, like, oh, crap, I just don't know. So it's just one of those... It
kind of derails Voq's character arc, too, if he suddenly become, gets disguised as a human, because we set up in what was it, the last episode, episode 4, that he was going to go into hiding essentially with L'Rell's house.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it's a question of, if we see Voq again, then that's completely out the window. If we don't,
yes,
because there's kind of a couple lines there. Is that, 1, L'Rell comes from a house of spies. 2, she said that Voq would have to give up everything, as in his identity.
And that does make it a little bit of a possibility.
It does make it a bit of a possibility.
They would have to tell his story in flashbacks then, if they did that. Possibly,
I just don't know. But there's also the question of, he was captured at the Battle of Binary Star and was kept around as L'Rell's plaything, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that says that they have a relationship. But there's a question of, she could have just done that. She could have did that. Captured a Federation officer and then... Oh. I'm now believing that is Voq. Because it's one of those things where it's sort of weird if you think of this guy, Ash Taylor, as someone who... it's going to be weird that the Klingons kept him around. Unless it says something very strong about L'Rell's character, that she used him to explore human culture. But it's also a great possibility that the Klingons could have basically inserted this guy, like they inserted Darwin, as a human-altered agent, using casualty figures. For it. Yeah, just using casualty figures from the Battle of Binary. Those probably weren't hard to get in terms of classification. So all they have to do is just say, hey, this guy didn't die, and then records mended so long as he passed scanners, then he's good to go. It's just, I think it's going to be a little weird to set up him as Voq, just in so much that he could have here's what it can basically have gone down. Is that they're escaping, they think they've got what they need. So Voke's plan is to fake an injury so he stays behind. Laurel comes, and they initiate a mating ritual. Lorca misinterprets that as a fight, tries to save Tyler, gets a glancing shot on Voke, and he basically is improvising from now. So the plan may have only gone so far as to insert Voke as as in the cell with Lorca, and didn't intend to escape. But Voke saw the opportunity in trying to escape with Lorca to get more information, so he's now winging it.
I think for me it would be more interesting if if he's a Klingon agent, fine, but I think it'd be more interesting if he was not Voke.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah, I just don't know where this is going to go now.
Because I would like Voke to have a more interesting character arc where we see him go to Laurel's house and find out many interesting and crazy things there, and embark on a redemption arc and that sort of thing. So
yeah, because that would also allow them to open up about Klingon history as well, and what might be going on with the cloaking device. So I was looking forward to that. I thought that was going to happen, but now
I want him to do that.
Now, if that doesn't happen in a series of several episodes, I'm going to think more and more that this guy's going to be Voke.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't like. I think that could be interesting, especially if this is Voke winging it, and he eventually gets to the idea where he eventually starts to understand humans.
Goes native?
He might go native a little bit. That's what I'm thinking, is that if this is Voke, it gives him the opportunity to see the other culture from inside. And he might find that might be a way of bridging the two cultures. If this is Voke and they don't find that out for a few episodes, he might actually get to know the crew and get to the point of this is the Federation isn't our greatest threat. It's us. So why are we fighting them? So
sort of a backdoor way of uniting the houses, maybe.
As a backdoor way, but Core completely threw that out the window. He basically told Voke that won't work. So if Voke knows that fighting the Federation won't unite the houses, and then he finds out that, the Federation has a better idea of unity than Klingons do, he might get other ideas, especially if he's now improvising and has a little self-initiative.
I'm suddenly thinking of, where this needs to end up is, a ceasefire, essentially, because, we know that sort of, mistrust and hostilities do continue even if it's not a shooting war.
Yeah.
Into TOS times.
Yeah, up until undiscovered countries, so that's a...
well, up until the Organian peace treaty, I would say.
Yeah, that is step number one, but even then...
enforced peace treaty. So what if this is... the formation or the reformation, because I can't remember if there was if it was Ren and Enterprise. What if we're witnessing the formation of the Klingon High Council?
Possibly.
Of a more democratic way to lead the Empire than perhaps they had before.
Yeah.
Based on Voke learning stuff about the Federation and bringing that back.
That could be very interesting, and I now want to see every episode of Discovery right now.
I wanted that from the beginning.
I know. I'm just really excited now because I completely was not thinking about this guy being Voke through the episode, and now it's got some really interesting angles.
I really want to know if he is.
If he is or he isn't. I think he is at this point, but where they go with that, it's not. They could. Yeah, it's just not clear, and I really like that.
Yeah.
I can't see the A to B, and that's what I was thinking. I was seeing a little bit more in the last episode. Now, nope, I don't know what's going on. Because they also gave... I thought they were going to give Captain Lorca basically what now stands as Stamets' plot. But they gave Lorca another explanation for his eyes than I was thinking.
Yeah, you thought his eyes were going to be, full of...
I thought he got spored. That's what I thought, and then he was trying to hide that because he was trying to navigate, but now Lorca is not the... He's not the Kwisatz Haderach, but someone else might become that. Because they are moving on from the tardigrade plot, so now they're dealing with the ethical implications not of using the tardigrade, but of using Stamets to navigate the spore drive.
Yeah, which I thought for sure Burnham was going to do that. I
Yeah,
thought
and
I thought for sure she'd take that on herself.
And I thought Lorca would. Well, I thought Burnham would do that with the injector. Well, except that what I was wondering is like if they would actually use that this episode. If he did have the spore eyes, it could have been a discussion point for the next episode where he realizes like, oh crap, we need another navigator, but here's the tools to do that, and I already have the spore eyes, so might as well. But I think that might be a little bit harder for him to remain the tactical commander if he's also jumping with the spore drive and that's having a physical effect.
Definitely.
So yeah, Stamets now has injected himself with the tardigrade DNA, and he can now basically pilot the ship through Blackburn in their spore jumps.
I've heard this compared to Dune. I've also seen it compared to the slipstream drive in Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. And given that current connection to Roddenberry, I'm guessing if they got that from anywhere, it would probably have been there.
Yeah, although it could just be general inspiration from sci-fi as well. Although I am seriously considering trying to find a copy of Photoshop and getting into that type of thing again, because I want to put Stamets' head on top of the God Emperor of Dune body, and then just have that as like just a title: Discovery Season 2, God Emperor of Spores. And Stamets is just a half tardigrade, half human, sees the future and is controlling destiny and from another galaxy, and yeah, just go nuts with that.
Yeah.
Good luck finding a picture for that one.
The actor Anthony Rapp is very big on fan interaction on Twitter. I do not know what he would think of that.
God Emperor Stamets. The spores must flow.
and that final scene did give off a very distinct Gary Mitchell vibe with me.
Yeah, that he's displaced in some way.
There's going to be consequences of him using this.
Yeah, and they're not.
And right now, we can only speculate what that might be.
Because that was a very odd scene, and I don't know how to interpret it. So he's having his moment with his significant other in the. He's not
Dr.
the chief.
Culber.
Dr. Culber. Yeah.
And he's not the chief medical officer.
But he is a doctor.
He's a doctor on the ship, but not the CMO. So that I thought it was.
So he's like Dr. Solar.
Yeah.
Something like that, if I remember right from TNG.
Yeah, and the now he's got some he had that scene where he's happily looking in the mirror and then turns away.
He walks away, and there he is happily looking out of the mirror.
Well, yeah, I
really
mean, it was
creepy.
him looking in the mirror. It was from the mirror, so it was the mirror again, but it was time delayed.
Yeah.
So he only walks away after a moment. So we'll see how that actually plays out, because it could be that he's shifting in quantum somehow, something like that. So yeah, we'll see what ultimately happens. Although, if he ends up, let's just say, exploring the Spore network in kind of a Captain Decker type way, or Commander Decker type way, then that might be the way his character ends up in the series. I don't know if Stamets is coming back for season 2.
Well, we don't know anything about season 2 at this point, because this point there is no season 2.
Well, yeah, it's like
hasn't been. Yeah.
If I had to pick one character who doesn't make it, I would say Stamets, but he doesn't necessarily die. He becomes a Spore network traveler, like a tardigrade.
Or maybe the Traveler. Maybe the Traveler from TNG was all about spores to begin with.
Maybe. I mean, maybe
he was just talking about it in different terms.
Yeah.
Maybe the Traveler is Stamets. Yes. There you go.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's all coming together.
Yes. So yeah, that would be an interesting. Either that, or they find some way of curing him, and he kind of goes off like, "Oh well, I'm not going to be the Kwisatz Haderach." But still, it was fun.
Maybe he goes nuts for a little while, and power mad and crazy, and then they cure him.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, that was kind of the episode in a nutshell, and then they had the moment of sending the tardigrade off. And after
that was a nice moment, I thought.
Yeah, and of course I really liked it because it was just they basically fired up out of a vertical torpedo tube, you could say. I mean, it's just like a hatch, but it was still kind of fun.
I assumed it was just, a dorsal airlock or
yeah,
something.
just, if you wanted to go on an EV excursion. And, but it was just kind of funny is that he was kind of a projectile. So I'm kind of hoping that in Star Trek Online, that if they're, let's basically
a torpedo.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the console. The console would probably be the jump, but if they needed a trade power for the crossbow class, it's some type of passive with the ship under certain circumstances launches tardigrade.
So I'll tell you one thing I particularly liked about this episode is how, this is something I like when TV shows do this, is when they have our heroes actually outsmart the villains instead of just get lucky. Captain Lorca outsmarts the Klingons several times.
Yeah.
He's always got plans going. He dropped hints and specific phrases, and he wanted to see if anyone was feeding those to the Klingons because they'd ask him about them when they were interrogating him.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like it when we've got heroes that use their heads and outsmart the villains.
Yeah, and that was interesting, and that was a nice way of turning Mudd's character around, because he had the sympathetic story, and he was easily kind of trying to get real buddy with Lorca in a very immediate way. But again, if it's Vogue, then the episode's completely flipped on his head for Tyler.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the I thought that was an interesting just way of just showing Lorca's character just with a few subtle actions and how he responded. So they've kept very consistent with him. So do we want to talk about what happened with Lorca's backstory? Because this is revealed in those moments with the prisoners.
It sounds to me like he says I basically blew up my ship with my crew on it rather than let them get captured, right?
Yeah, and captured and taken back to Kronos so they could be paraded and given a slow death. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially if Tyler is Vogue. Because Vogue might have taken
he could use that against Lorca on the ship. He could turn the crew against Lorca.
That might be the start of him actually respecting you.
It could be.
Because if it's Vogue, hearing someone refer to Klingons like that and being that dedicated might leave an impression on him. For a human way, that would be tough. But for a Klingon to do that, I mean, that's pretty darn impressive. So that might be, if it's Vogue and then Tyler ultimately sides with Lorca, that could be the moment that really kind of brought him around to see humans in a different light. And I don't think anyone's talking about that quite yet. But it was sort of interesting for Lorca's character because it immediately that turned everything that was going on with his eyes into the sympathetic moment for him, because he did this thing that you would not expect any starship captain to do. It was compassionate to his crew, but in a very pragmatic way.
Yeah.
And he tried to make the best of the situation. He couldn't fix it, so he just tried to make the best thing he could, but he still made sure that he paid a price. So he basically damaged his eyes when watching the ship explode. And that he refuses to fix his eyes, so he has that pain as part of his character. And I think that it was kind of quick to turn him back around into, the protagonist captain. But I think it's just everything that was going on with his eyes kind of made it better. Because it kind of showed that he didn't write them off. That is still a very important moment to him. So we'll see what comes up with this one. Because it's a very interesting arc. They kind of left it off at a point where you can sort of leave it for a moment. But it's definitely not resolved yet.
Yeah, that's like I said, is maybe a little more self-contained than some of the previous episodes.
Yeah, because this one felt like very much, not quite. It's in the back to the syndicated format, but I think this could have fit in Enterprise. It felt like an Enterprise season 3 episode.
Yeah,
in terms of its overall how it would fit with the rest of the season.
and that's probably okay. I mean, where we're at in the season, and you know, getting into the middle part, that's fine to do some of those a little bit more self-contained stories before you really get deep back into arcs to end the season.
And
although we might have a mid-season arc as well.
And I did notice that they did not play a trailer for next week.
They
did actually. I saw one.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they didn't like include it in the like it came with the last commercials in my stream, and then I also watched.
I get a commercial free, and they didn't. They just went right to the credits.
Yeah, so they put it in the commercial.
It's after the credits.
Oh, I looked for after the credits. I think I got it in the commercial.
Because I as as you might expect, I rushed over to my computer as soon as the credits started rolling to see what people were saying on Twitter, mostly about Tilly swearing, which we haven't covered yet. We haven't covered yet.
Stamets.
And Stamets. And then as I was looking at Twitter on my computer, I noticed, oh wait, the preview for next week is playing. I better watch that.
Okay, yeah, it's there somewhere. Like maybe
so it is there,
or end the last commercial break, but
yeah,
it's there. I don't know what to make of that episode because I have no idea what's going on. There's an anomaly of some kind, and a shuttle, and Burnham in that shuttle, and that's kind of it. They didn't really show that much. They did show in After Trek a scene from the next show, and that was Tyler meeting up with Tilly and Burnham, and then. This was kind of the most revealing of what might happen in the episode. Burnham freezes, says Sarek, collapses on the ground, holds her side, and then looks up, and there's what looks like Sarek also on the ground in the mess hall. So we'll see where that goes.
So Sarek is in trouble because we know they have this long range connection because he imparted some of his Katra to her.
Yeah.
And so. We know that he's going to be in it and he's going to be in trouble, and obviously that's going to be big for Burnham's character.
Yeah, so I think it might be a Burnham-centric episode with the A-plot. And then we'll probably hear a little bit more about what Lorca thinks of the Stamets plan. Maybe it's the B-plot.
Yeah.
Him kind of getting back in the reins and finding out, what did you guys do while I was gone?
But it'll be interesting to have Sarek back in a more integral way to the plot, I think. Less a cameo and more actually the character being there and being interesting and being important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
which is kind of what Mudd was in this one. He was essentially just a cameo.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be back. Well, we know he'll be back because we know he's back in at least
when someone
one more
shouts, "You haven't seen the last of me," and we know that he survives to TOS.
That was a little too Batman for me.
Yeah.
Although it kind of felt nice because it did sort of, for me, kind of, even though it was a little Batman, it did sort of leave it off as a point for Mudd that he was very sort of he was pleading with Lorca before he locked the door, and then he turned that completely around to being
he'll be back with a grudge.
Yeah, so it left from just leaving a man with the Klingons to leaving someone who is a villain. Or has villainous traits relative to the series. So I don't know if they'll bring him necessarily back this season, but I mean they could.
They could.
Yeah, especially if L'Oreal's
we know that the actor was in at least 2 episodes, I think, if I remember what I read before the show aired correctly.
So I mean, he might come back and he might have some like. It could be that he gets out, learns something, like he might be the one who's supposed to Vogue, if Tyler's Vogue, as part of revenge of just like, haha, you thought you were, you thought you were siding with someone you could trust, but look.
He's a Klingon agent.
But he's a Klingon agent. Hey, haha, it might be that's part of his revenge. So we'll see. But it could be anything at this point, so... Yeah, we'll just have to see.
That's the nice thing about Discovery is we will be saying this episode after episode. Well, it could be anything.
Yeah, well, maybe up until the end. I mean, when pieces really start falling into place. I mean, they'll probably have a big reveal in the final episode, but we'll probably see how certain things take shape at least by season 14. Or, sorry, episode 14.
Season 14. Hey, if we get a season 14, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, supernatural levels of
or Simpsons
renewals.
levels.
The Simpsons.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as this, the series goes, I mean, a multi-season run would be great for these characters, and I mean, they would have to find new things for these people to do and be involved with, and much less about the Klingons, but they could do an exploration plot.
Oh yeah,
because they could basically just send the
This
at the end of the series, equip Discovery with a conventional drive, and just send it out on a mission that's completely analogous to the Enterprise, just in a different direction. And there you go. Season 2. Go find something.
Enterprise went north, you go south.
Yes.
Galactic north, galactic south.
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned it briefly, but what did you guys think of Tilly's swearing line?
There was that initial reaction when she first said it. It felt like, oh, here they go. But when Stamets said it, I got the moment. Because
they used it as a bonding moment between them.
Yes, and that's what made it okay. Is that Tilly made a faux pas, and then Stamets it basically accepted her for doing that, and just said, you know what? Hey, yeah, it is that good.
That's the spirit, is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, and that just it worked for Stamets' character, it worked for Tilly's character, kind of gave them that little moment, that bonding moment. They're part of a crew, and I think it fit everyone involved. And even if it was the F-bomb, it was a good use of it. I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's just like getting mad at them, finding good use for the F-bomb. I mean, that's kind of Trek, isn't it? I mean, it might be objectively...
She reminds me so much of Barclay. Tilly does.
Yeah.
Because she's brilliant. I mean, and good at her jobs, but she has that kind of social awkwardness of, she never says exactly the right thing, and has these personal quirks and things like that, and she reminds me so much of Barclay.
Yeah, and it's a character I can definitely relate to, and I thought that is a really good moment. And I think it's just that if there's any outrage associated with this, I think it's more of an excuse just to get mad at the show, rather than actually looking at what this is doing for the F-bomb. I mean, just to think about it like that. I mean, if you're mad about it...
I think it's a sign of the times, in part. This is what streaming TV is right now.
Yeah.
And the other question that I would love to ask, past producers and writers of Star Trek is, would you have used that if you had been allowed to?
I would say in the undiscovered country, it would have made Spock's final line...
Go F yourself.
Or for that matter, Data in First Contact.
Oh, or Data in Generations.
Data in Generations, they start crashing. Holy
Yeah, and again, I just think it is like, if kids are watching the show, it is a great introduction to the F-bomb. You're gonna hear it eventually.
And a way for parents, they can, parents can explain what it is and why you shouldn't use it.
It was a happy expletive. It wasn't used in any kind of a mean way. It was just like, this is great, and it was just like, let's rewrite the context of that word.
So words only have the power you give them. We as a society have decided that word is, quote, bad, and we use it anyway. So
and it's not necessarily an objectively bad thing either. So it's kind of weird to associate that with such negative connotations. So it's like, this is maybe an example of language changing a little bit, with trying to say something different in context. Which is for kings.
And I did see someone who said, it's like, I want to watch this with my kids. I had this experience growing up of watching TNG with my parents and that sort of thing, and I'm like, to some extent there is, but you can either wait till they're older if you have that concern, or just pull your DVD of TNG off the shelf and watch that with them.
Yeah, that's what my parents did. Is that they were concerned about me watching Wrath of Khan for a while. Me and my brothers, and ditto in some respects too, Search for Spock. So I didn't actually see those two episodes until I was a little bit older, so maybe 9 or 10 years old. when I started watching Star Trek at 4. So it's just that as a parent, you're just responsible for your kids. You just show them the episodes you want to show them. You don't necessarily need to show them all of Star Trek as you're watching it in real time. Because, I mean, that's just maybe not the best idea in any case. Because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, one way or the other could be a traumatizing scene for kids. I mean, you think about,
I took a liking to Star Trek 4 at a very early age, and it actually has the strongest language of any other installment of Star Trek other than this now.
Yeah, and at the time, like, same with me. Like, for me, Star Trek was a few episodes of that we had whenever TNG and DS9 happened to be on. And then a couple of VHSs for the original series, and then the complete movie library up to Undiscovered Country. So for me, Star Trek was number 1, number 4, and number 5 for a while. Then it got expanded to 6, and then back to 2, 3.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so I mean, it's ultimately, of course, up to parents to decide what they want to do there. But
I would have much more of a problem as a parent letting them watch episode 3, and also
that was a bit
4.
more gruesome.
And just in general, of just like making sure it's okay first, because you know it's got a TV-14 rating. It says that at the start of every episode.
Yes. Those ratings are there for a reason.
Yes. Yep. And you got to pay attention to those. Same thing with games. Let your kids play E, then you let them graduate up to T, and then they will go to M anyway, but try to delay that as long as possible.
So relating this a little bit back to Stowe, like we try to do.
Yeah.
Not specifically this episode, but we did have a long live stream from our community manager today, who was asked many times about Discovery stuff, and actually displayed your wonderful tardigrade art.
Yep, I'll make sure to give you that version of it, because I did touch it up a little bit and added a few more points to the diagram of what the ship I want lost from Star Trek Discovery.
It's basically I'll put up some art on the show here, but it's basically a tardigrade with some nacelles on it.
Yeah, it's the saddles are on the nacelles are on a saddle. That's the captain's saddle, and he's got a little helmet which has the main deflector on it, because it does have conventional warp drive in case the tardigrade gets tired or you need to just make a smaller jump. And I also made sure that I labeled the landing struts, the docking clamps, and the manual control columns, or manual steering columns, as the antenna.
Not the joystick; it's manual steering column.
It's got 2. Because I mean, you put the saddle there, the antenna right there, so you just steer it with that.
but really, one thing that Ambassador Kale was repeatedly asked was, when are we going to get, Discovery ships and that sort of thing? And the answer is basically they never announce things until they announce them. So
but
he never talks about upcoming content. What he did say is they would be fools not to.
Yeah, so he's basically saying yes, but he can't actually use the word yes. So fill in the lines yourself.
You can't say when.
Yeah.
What I mentioned on Twitter the other day, that once the Crossfield class, Discovery's class, comes to Stowe, it would seem a natural for a Miracle Worker ship.
Yeah, a Miracle Worker science ship would be a great fit. I'm just hoping that they bring these out in the C-Store, because I'm just a little worried about trying to get this from promo, because I really like the ship. And I think it's one of those things where, just for Discovery's, or for Star Trek Online's long-term release strategy, it would be good to start feeding Discovery ships into the C-Store, because they are running out of canon ships. So
this is
true. I guess I have noticed that the big series hero ships are C-Store ships. Well, it's only the really the others maybe call them second tier iconic ships that get done as promotions, like the Enterprise J and.
Well, that's kind of what worries me as a precedent, is that the Enterprise J and the Constitution class are both there. And even though that for the Enterprise J, we did get C-Store 26th century ships. So I'm worried that it could go that way, where we get a lot of the other ships, like the Jaeger and the Europa, as C-store ships, but then the Crossfield is a promo. Although that won't be too bad.
I mean, that wouldn't be too bad because those are some neat ships. We actually, I was going to mention it on a previous episode, but I didn't have time. We did get some neat sketches from the promotion, or from the show, of those ships that were present at the Battle of the Binary Stars, and there's some cool looking ones in there.
I think it was, what was it? The one that had the two nacelles kind of going up, kind of like it had like an Enterprise J type configuration. Was that the Jaeger? I'm not.
I'd have to go back and look. Yeah.
But there's one of those. That ship would be the one I would kind of like after the Crossfield. That's the one I'd want. And it might even get down to which, for me, it's just like which one has stats that work better for my characters. I really want the Crossfield. I really want my own Discovery, but we'll see. I mean,
fell for the Walker even the Shenzhou ship.
Yeah,
that's like that and Europa are kind of the two that I'm like they're cool, but they're sort of the lower priority ones. Because I mean, it would be good to get those ships, like especially if like you combine fold the patrol escorts into the Walker. Because they do have some common points. But yeah, we'll see what goes on with that.
I'll tell you what. In this episode, I think I saw my favorite Klingon outfits so far, and they're the ones that the guards have.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's just so much stuff.
They looked
here.
a little bit more Klingon. They looked a little bit more. I don't know. I've never exactly liked the outfits that Vogue and Laurel have. They just
Laurel's in particular is
kind of weird.
It's a little, yeah. But yeah, we're seeing other Klingons, and these were much more conventional. Not quite the classic, but we don't know
closer
what
to that.
Yeah, but actually, here's kind of the thing: is that if those represent the unified Klingon Empire, what we could be seeing in all these other Klingon outfits are just individual elements of what ultimately becomes the standard Klingon uniform, because that's got to represent the KDF. So I'm really doubting that we'll see something that looks like, say, Martok's, just the classic DS9 Klingon, until after this season, if we see anything like that at all, because it would kind of be weird.
It is providing a wide variety of stuff that Stowe could use for Klingon outfits.
It's so wide that it's like you can't get this all into one lockbox.
So much space, Barbie.
Yeah, I mean, there's just got to be. I'm just hoping for Discovery C-Strip fans because it's just there's so much stuff here. It's like, and it would be crazy for Cryptic not to do this. I mean, it would be off-putting to some fans, but I would say that maybe
they can choose not to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, just get used to it. I mean, Star Trek Online isn't always about one thing. It goes in cycles. And it's certainly gone in cycles before. We got a lot of TOS stuff. We got a lot of TNG stuff this year. So just go through another cycle. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could just be a long-term release thing that Cryptic could be getting up to. It's just like, hey, we've got so much new stuff here. It's like, it almost seems like they've got like several series worth, even at this point.
I mean, it's just a whole new show's worth of completely new designs. And it could take them a while to get through it all. And I'd be fine with that.
I mean, that's
staggered release.
I mean, that kind of just helps Cryptic to, keep making really
and these will be money. These will be money makers.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like it gives them a much needed sort of basically a way of continuing to add content and just giving them more material to work with. So I'm really pleased to see that there is this depth of material here, and we're playing a game right now that can really take advantage of that.
All right, gentlemen, we will end our discussion there for this evening. Please join us next week when we discuss episode 6. But for now, enjoy the final frontier.